You've been listening to the True Cash Flow Podcast, where we show you our best strategies and techniques we implement to build streams of passive income online, generating millions of dollars in revenue last year alone. To get some of our free training videos, just go to truecashflow.com and we will send you our quick start guide for free.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the exact steps of how you could actually start your online business. And 3 implementable things that we're going to talk about today are exactly how do you find the right product, how do you know if it sells well, and how do you know if the margins are there. And we're going to talk about the exact steps of doing that. Once you've established that those 3 criteria work, and it's not a guessing game, there's a software that you can use, and we'll put it in the notes here just so you have it. You can scroll through the notes on this podcast, and there's a software that'll actually show you how many sales every product gets, how do you know if the margins are there, and we're going to talk all about that right now. So let's talk about the very first piece of the puzzle is how do you find the right product?
So let's say I'm a new seller on Amazon. Where do I start?
It sounds ultra basic, right? Mm-hmm. But you really start with look around your own house and look at your previous. If you've never ordered on Amazon, ask your brother, your sister, your parents, your kids what they've ordered on Amazon. I know that sounds really basic, but the reason why you want to do that is that'll give you the starting point to now go into the software or go into Amazon, because you don't need the software to do it, but it'll manually maybe take you a couple hours to sort through 40, 50 products, and the software, it might take 3 or 4 minutes. And I did
time is money, huh?
Yeah, to me too, because when I first started on Amazon, there was no software that I could use. I had to manually do all this. And when I found out that premium level of the software, there's an extension, and that extension is $89 one time. And the app is what you're going to need in the beginning. So there's an app for, I think it's $89 a month for the Pro one. But you only need it for the first couple months while you're going through and picking out your first 10, 15 products.
Right. And the software is amzproductfinder.com.
Yeah, it's AMZ. That's like the nickname for Amazon. Yeah. AMZproductfinder.com. So you got to put in the .com, but we'll put it in the notes so they could just see it right there. But what's really cool, if you just get rough ideas, that'll show you how to use this software effectively. But just say you don't even know anyone that has ever sold on Amazon. You don't have any family, you don't have any friends, you've never even heard of Amazon.
Most don't even realize people sell on there.
It's funny because 3 or 4 years ago, even I would have thought, and I've been internet marketing for 13 years now, and I even thought when you buy something from Amazon that Amazon is the one selling it to you, not the fact that they're just facilitating the sale for people like us.
So you start with basic ideas for a product.
And that's just the bare basics, right? Just say, what's the last thing I ordered? I mean, it's a bad example, and I've ordered tons of things, but some protein powder, right? That's not something you're going to start with, but just use that as the foundation because it's a bad example, but it still works for this example that we're going to talk about.
Right. The rule is anything you put in your body or on your body, you want to get made here, and you don't want to start with that.
No, I mean, for one, and I'll tell you why not real quick, but this is much more advanced stuff when we're really fine-tuning the right product that we're going to pick. You don't want anything that's real bulky. So like the protein powder comes in this big old jug. It's really easy. I mean, there can't be much margins there. I mean, this would be a horrible product to sell, but the company that makes it, they're selling tens of thousands of these a month. So on a razor thin margin, but they're selling tens of thousands of containers of these. But that's not where you'd want to start. But let's just narrow it down by that example.
Right. So you start getting ideas and then you go to the software.
Yeah, because I just know in my head it's not a good product. But you would find out if you just went in the software, put in the brand of the company. And the brand doesn't matter, but it's called Food, P-H-O-O-D, right? So you would put P-H-O-O-D into the search engine. And you can manually do it that way. That's why the software just blows you away, because it'll tell you how many they're selling a month, how much sales they're making per month, which this is not information you can get from Amazon. So without this software, you would never be able to know these things and be able to make an educated decision, except, and I'll tell you the way I used to do it without the software. I would have to analyze everyone's BSR, right? Their bestseller rank. And then I would have to figure and estimate and say, okay, well, their BSR is this, they're in this category. And it was a really crude formula to be able to narrow these things down and figure it out. Now with the software, I know how they're doing it. I believe it's a pretty tight-lipped secret, but I believe they're taking every BSR that's on there and they're figuring out that's your bestseller rank again. And what they're doing is they're figuring out, okay, if you're a 1100 BSR, you must be making making this amount of sales because I've analyzed my own products and it's within 2 or 3% of what I'm actually making.
It really is.
That's why the software's made this so much easier. So we already know that food product, it's a protein powder. Does it sell well? Yes. Can I compete? Probably not. Are the margins there? Probably not.
Because the software tells you all of this.
Yeah, and it's telling you based on the fact that you could see what it's going to cost you ultimately to ship it out. Now, the only reason I know the margins aren't there is because now you would have to source that product. And we're going to get into all that, but let's first talk about just finding the product. I want to make sure I give you guys a clear path forward about finding the product.
Right.
So you could search products manually, right? You could just go in there. You could take anything from your house, anything that you want to know about. If you wanted to learn about scissors, if you wanted to learn about pencils, it's cool because you can actually see how many they're selling, how many reviews they have. And we're going to talk about applying all this data, but the amount of data that it gives you is just mind-boggling.
Right, and I think my favorite part of it is finding other products that you would never even think of.
Maybe you don't know what you want to sell, but you know you want to sell in sports or outdoors or fitness or home and kitchen, pet supplies. You don't know what exactly you want to sell, but maybe you have an idea. And that's what the cool thing about the software is, right? How we just pick a category and then it shows us everything in that category. But now we have to apply our criteria, right? I'm just showing you, because everybody asks us all the time, how do I decide what product to sell? And it's not anything that's difficult. It's just you want to get ideas. That's why number one thing, let's recap real quick. Look around your house. Look around, ask friends, ask family. Ask them what they're ordering on Amazon. That way you could see, because if you know people that are ordering stuff, that means they're not the only one that's ordering it. There's billions of dollars in sales every year on Amazon. And what's amazing about it is that you can see how well something sells. And that's why the 3 criteria are, does it sell well? Can I compete? Are the margins there?
So now we've done that. And how do we know if it sells well?
There could be one seller that's just crushing it, and that's going to be hard to compete with. So you're looking at, does it sell well? Meaning, are there multiple sellers that are doing well on that product? Not just one person
dominating,
killing it.
Right.
Yeah, because if so, then it's like, okay, I got to compete against this one person.
Right, and that's why we want to see at least 3 or 4 sellers doing at least 10 grand a month.
That's right, because we know that there's multiple sellers doing it, and the does it sell well part, that ties right in to the can I compete part, right? Because you just said it perfectly. We want to see 3 or 4 sellers that are doing about 10 grand a month. Different products, I mean, we'll get into that. That's a whole nother show, is how do you know what the multiplier should be? How do you know how much profit you need to make? And I'm going to give you guidelines, but that's really up to you. How well funded you are, how risk adverse you are. There's a lot of things that tie into that. So we're going to dabble on that today. But first thing we know, does it sell well? Meaning, are there 3 or 4 sellers? So our number 2 is, can I compete?
And seeing if we can compete is pretty simple, because all you look at is the reviews, right? So out of those 3 or 4 sellers, if they have less than 50 reviews, that's how you know.
That's right. And what we like to do is, if we see those 3 or 4 sellers that are doing 10 grand plus, and sometimes you'll just see that it's out of control. Like there's 7 or 8 sellers doing 30, 40, 50 grand a month, but you don't have to be that aggressive. I mean, it's cool when you find products like that. But what's the second part, which Saru just mentioned, was we want to see people with 50 reviews or less. And a lot of people ask, well, why 50? I don't know. I just made up that number. That means I can compete because 50 reviews.
It's easy to get 50 reviews yourself.
Yeah. So, we talked about it and we said, well, what's a good number? Because sometimes we've seen people with 7, 8 reviews that are doing over 10 grand a month.
Right. It depends on your product too. It's not easy to get 100 plus reviews on certain products.
That's right. Yeah. And so the can I compete part, all that boils down to is that you want to see those sellers, that there's a couple of them at least that have 50 reviews or less, because that shows you there's an entry point for you. You know you can compete, so we know it sells well because we see they're doing 10 grand a month. We know we can compete based on the fact that we're marketers and we know 50 reviews or less is really easy to compete with somebody at that level. If all the 4 people that were doing 10 grand plus a month had 10,000, 6,000 reviews, I would just scratch that product right away, because I'm not looking for the highest apple on the tree, right? I want the one that's
the lowest
just
hanging
fell
fruit
in front of me on my foot. I want to just pick it up off my toe, right? And that's what she always says, that we go after the lowest hanging fruit. And it's true, because it's the path of least resistance. If there's an an apple at your toe or at the top of the tree, you're going to climb to the top of the tree or just...
Some would call you lazy.
Well, time is money, right? That's what you always say. Time
work
is money.
Smart, not hard.
That's right. And if you do that, because then you don't even have to worry about if the margins are there, right? So you start off with, does it sell well? That's pretty simple, because you got to remember, if you could do this manually too. You would just have to look at their BSR, their reviews. It would take you several hours. And if you just plugged it in, it just makes it easier. So it's not my software, by the way. So I'm not promoting the fact that you should go get it. It's just a tool that I actually pay just like everyone else for the same tool. And it's really just made it so much easier to be able to do the first step. Does it sell well? Can I compete? Is all about reviews. And then the third thing is, are the margins there?
So how do you determine good margins?
So that's the pretty easy process, because that's more just scientific. You don't really have to analyze anything. All you're doing is, so there's a site and it's free. It's called Alibaba. And it's just, guys, remember, we're starting off basic. There's an entire video training series where we go through all the packaging, the shipping, how all the aspects of being profitable on Amazon. But in this show, I just want anybody who's listening to be able to get started. Living in LA, I can go to Vegas, I can go by foot, I can go by bike, or I can go by car, or by plane, right? There's 4 ways I could go there. Either way, I'm going to get to Vegas. But if I want to walk to Vegas, I don't know. I'm guessing maybe 3 days. I don't know. It depends on how fast I walk, right? But I know I can fly there in 40 minutes. So that's just the difference. If you go to Alibaba, then all you have to do is search for that exact product that you just found out that it sells well. You found out that you can compete based on the reviews. And now it's just about, are the margins there? So on Alibaba.com, that's where you're going to find the actual manufacturers.
Right, and there's plenty on there. And the reason why you want to get a bona fide final quote on that is because it's often a lot different than the price listed on that site.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the car business bait and switch thing, right?
Right.
They'll have one Honda Accord for 25 grand, and then they sell that in 15 minutes, but they run the newspaper ad for 4 days, right? You're never going to get that price typically. And Alibaba, a lot of the sellers are genuine, they're legitimate, and the price that they put on their range. See, because the way that they get around this is they might say that, you can get, say, a blender bottle, right, that you put the protein shakes in. It was a product that I've looked at, and they're great sellers, by the way, so feel free to steal it. But, what's cool about that is, with that product, right, there was some sellers, like it would say like 70 cents, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck, 70 cents?
And the next says $12. It's insane.
That's right. And so I'm like, I'm going to just order from the person initially, right? Like you learn through your bumps and bruises, but I'm like, I'm just going to buy the one for 70 cents. So I tell them right away, I said, I want 5,000 of those. They're like, if you're only buying 5,000, it's like $1.60. And I'm like, wait, you said 7? They're like, that's if you do 100,000 or more. I'm like, okay. Well, you might have wanted to say that up front on the site instead of telling me now. So now, that's why we don't mess with that.
Or if you tell me you want your logo on it, it's another $2.
Yeah, right. They're like, that's with our logo on it.
Right.
And that's if you want to promote our brand.
Exactly.
But we do private labeling. That's a whole nother show. And you'll be excited to hear about the private labeling, because it's how you can get rid of copycats. And it's how you could make a product your own instead of you selling the same thing everyone else is selling and not being able to separate yourself from the competition.
Yeah, and once we get that bona fide quote, we want to get samples.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I forgot to mention the sample aspect. And there's another show on that too. But the reason you want to get the samples is because you want to touch it. We don't ever want to sell junk. We want to be proud of what we sell. We're going to put our logo on it. We're going to put our branding. We're going to put our packaging. We're basically putting our names behind the product.
Right.
So if we get a sample and it's just absolute garbage, then you know right away that you need to get another sample from another supplier. Because I've had, students have asked me, they're like, Mike, well, the pictures, it looks really good. And I always give an example. One of the students got these, like the pepper grinders, and they looked really good, but the problem was every few of them, you could tell right away that it wasn't like a real tight, snug fit. And I said, okay, well, I wouldn't do that. I would get more samples. And the problem is that they didn't want to waste time and things like that. But I was giving my advice that, hey, I would make sure that if you're going to sell it, you're not going to have any issues. So instead, they contacted the manufacturer, and the manufacturer said, we fixed that. They just smoothed it over. I said, well, then get another sample. And then they said, well, I'm pretty confident it's going to. I said, well, I'm just telling you, if it was me, I'd get another sample because I want to feel it, touch it, make sure it's solid if it's going to have my name behind it. And sure enough, 1 out of 10 of them still had an issue. And their negative reviews. I mean, the criteria is, does it sell well? Can I compete? Are the margins there? But while you're doing that too, you always want to improve a product. And one way to do that is by looking at the negative reviews, seeing what you need to fix on that product. And there's another great example of a garden item that a student got where they used that.
Right?
Yeah, the hose. Yeah. And what was cool about that was they looked at the negative reviews from all the top sellers, and it looked like the piece to the water spigot would leak. So they just got a thicker metal one, and they got a thicker rubber grommet in there. They eliminated that negative review and ended up selling tens of thousands of dollars a month right out of the gate. And that was really cool because like they used that little piece of the puzzle that we tell them is that, hey, also look at the reviews, because if you're getting a sample in the mail, might as well look at what your competitors that are similar to that, why your sample's coming to you, start doing research on the people that are already selling it. Then you can decide, hey, I see a lot of this as a common thread. Let me verify that on my sample. So that way you're not missing something that could be detrimental to your overall reputation. I mean, you might sell the heck out of something initially, but your reputation is going to be what really carries you forward month over month and allows you to improve and build your store and build your brand.
So those are basically the three things that we're looking at when we're trying to find a product and get started.
That's right, because if it sells well, you can compete, the margins are there, then that means get the sample. And that was a good point that you brought up, because always do that. I can't stress that enough. Always get the sample. That's just to get started, right? So if anyone's listening right now and you know that you could do this and you feel like that you want to be part of our team, right now we have a free video report. If you go to truecashflow.com, you can go there right now, just put in your first name and your email, and we'll immediately send you out the video report. And we're actually doing a mastermind coming up right now where we're going to have a bunch of the inner circle there together live, and we're going to go through all kinds of great ideas, brand new stuff that's working on Amazon. I'm going to be doing a lot of recording things there, recording different sessions, and I'll also send you some really cool clips from the mastermind that could be really helpful for you as you're starting to launch your business. So go to truecashflow.com, enter just your first name and your email, and I'll meet you on the other side.
You were listening to the True Cash Flow Podcast. If you would like our free training videos, go to truecashflow.com, enter just your first name and email address, and we will meet you on the other side. The information presented in this podcast is intended for your educational and informational purposes only. None of the statements contained in this podcast should be viewed as a prediction, guarantee, or promise that participating in our recommended programs will result in you generating a certain amount of income or achieving any level of monetary success. Success in any endeavor is based on a number of factors, including but not limited to hard work and capital resources. There are inherent risks in any business opportunity, and caution should be exercised before applying our information. You are encouraged to consult your attorney, CPA, or financial advisor before doing so.